And for the first time, your participation grade is going to rest on your ability to remain silent and take this seriously. Everything I ask you to do in the next 3.5 minutes, you really need to take it seriously, be silent, and take it as a serious activity. I want you to go under your desks. Go beneath your desk, please. Go under your desk. Get your entire body under the desk and sit there completely silent. All you have to do for your participation grade is remain quiet. If you do not take this seriously, you will lose points on your participation grade. You're going to remain under these desks for about 3 minutes. I want you to imagine that instead of being under that desk for 3 minutes, you're in that space for 3 months. Some of you may be comfortable, you may be okay. Some of you may already start to feel a little uncomfortable, a little confined. But imagine if this was the space that you had. I want you to try even look up. Look up right now. See if you can look up. Feel your head hit the table there. In reality, you would have less space than this vertically. Now, I want you to imagine that not only are you trapped in this space for 3 months, you're chained down to the floor. You have to go to the bathroom. That's just going to happen right where you are. So after a few days, the floor will be covered in urine and feces. In terms of food, the food that you eat will be kind of like a mushy soup. That food will be thrown out of buckets onto the ground in front of you. You have the choice. You can either scoop it up with your hands or just lean over and eat it directly with your mouth. As you could see, it's going to be mixing with that urine and feces that only gets cleaned out once every 3 or 4 days. As the weeks wear on, diseases will start to mix with that layer of mucus and feces and urine on the floor. People next to you will start to die. 1 out of every 6 of you will not make it across. Scurvy, measles, smallpox will be running wild throughout the ship. If you are in the women's quarters, at any point, a man could come along and rape you. If you're in the women's quarters as well, you will start to hear babies crying. Some mothers will become so desperate, they will kill their own children. Some people, even adults, will become so desperate, they'll stop eating. Some people will even commit suicide because the conditions are so intolerable. Imagine the discomfort you feel sitting on a carpet under a desk, and then imagine those conditions that I described for 3 months, surrounded by those conditions. Okay, you can sit up now. You can go back to your chair. Raise your hand if you could read title and objective for us, please. You'll notice there's no music today. McKenna?
The most terrible journey, the middle passage objective. Students will be able to describe the Atlantic slavery.
It's hard for me to imagine. I think it's hard for any of us. Even with that small simulation, you were under there for 4 minutes and 14 seconds. Okay? It's hard for me or any of us, I think, to truly imagine what it would have been like. Right? What it would have been like to be on the Middle Passage. But when we study history, it's incredible, and especially when we just study these horrible events, it's incredibly important to see these people as human beings and to really try to imagine what it would have been like to be in those conditions. Not just to read in a textbook, not just to kind of hear a teacher talk about it, but really try and think, wow, what would it have been like to go through that experience? Josh? We're going to talk in detail actually about the conditions here. But before we get to the kind of all the history, the terms that you need to know, etc., I want to ask you a question, and we'll go through it, and we're going to have a long time to analyze these two drawings actually. Good question. But what is the most powerful force in world history? What do you think is, beyond all other things, a force that has shaped world history? Huh? Slavery is a good guess. I'm thinking less specific. Toma?
Money.
Money, that's definitely along the lines of what I was thinking. Other people's opinion? Religion, that's a good guess. Not the one I was thinking of. McKenna? War. Good. I'm thinking along the lines of Toma. Yeah. Power, good. Those are two that I really am thinking of. Angela? Trade. Money and power. What do people, I think people have desired in world history that they really kind of want, that drives a lot of actions? Darren? Wealth, yeah. This kind of desire for money, for wealth, for profit, right? I would argue, I'm going to argue to you throughout the year, is the most powerful force in history. It's driven wars, it's driven governments, it's driven slavery, right? So, before we understand slavery, we have to understand the forces that were driving it. And the first term to understand is something called mercantilism. Mercantilism, listen very carefully to my explanation. I'm going to ask you a quick question to see if it makes sense. But mercantilism is this idea that there is a fixed amount of wealth in the world. This would go in your organizers, by the way, 28, or just put this in your organizers. Everything today goes under the slavery box for both sides. You can write it across the middle line, or you can draw arrows, you can do whatever you want. But the slavery box on handout 20A across both sides. So mercantilism is this idea that there is a fixed amount of wealth in the world. So if you imagine it, the Europeans back then, they thought there are, for instance, $100 billion that exist in the world. Okay? If they think that is true, how would governments and European nations act as a result? If they believe that there's a fixed amount of wealth where there's only $100 billion available in the world. I'll wait for 5 hands. Andrew?
If it was actually like $100 billion, they'd probably try to get like $1 million themselves. Like try to be as powerful as they can.
How are they going to try to be as powerful as they can? That's definitely right on pace. Christy? Why?
Because they try to win over the certain amount. One person that has something.
Okay, so they're going to fight each other for it, right? So there are going to be wars. What exactly are they going to be fighting over? What exactly are they going to be fighting over, potentially? Michael?
Because you know how they believe there's a limited amount of money? So there has to be, like, one person can only have so much. So they're going to be fighting to get most of the limited money there is.
Good. So they're going to be literally fighting for this money. And also, how do colonies play in here? How are colonies going to play in? How do colonies play into mercantilism? How are the colonies going to potentially play in here?